حبيب الله رسول الله حبيب الله. Allah our God is the greatest, the one and only glory to Him. He wanted humans to be the best and give His best religion to them. Allah our God is the greatest, the one and only glory to Him. He wanted humans to be the best and give His best religion to them.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبيه ومصطفاه وبعد. My dear brothers and sisters, welcome to another edition of your program Gardens of the Pious. Today's episode is number 284 in the series of Riyadus-Saliheen. And inshallah today, and by Allah's grace, we're going to begin a new chapter. It is chapter number 71, and the chapter is known as باب التواضع وخفض الجناح للمؤمنين, which means modesty and courtesy towards the believers. MashaAllah, in the beginning of the chapter, Al-Imam al-Nawawi, may Allah have mercy on him, listed several ayat, one of Surah Al-Shu'ara, then of Surah Al-Ma'idah, and Surah Al-Hujurat, and Surah Al-Najm, and Surah Al-A'raf. We've got 5 references. They are very important for us to comprehend the meaning and hopefully act upon the message that Allah the Almighty delivered in this ayat. One of the fatal diseases that destroy any person is arrogance. And the Prophet ﷺ made it very clear in a hadith that a person who has even an atom weight of arrogance, of pride, of kibr in his heart shall not enter paradise. And the sin which caused Iblis, after he used to be a righteous servant and a devout worshipper, caused him to be expelled from heaven and to be promised hell, to dwell eternally in it. And he made Iblis and his offspring, Satan and his offspring, the worst enemies to the believers, was arrogance. When Allah the Almighty ordered the angels to bow down to Adam, and they did, and Satan was there, Iblis was there, and he did not bow down as well. So Allah the Almighty asked him individually, ما منعك ألا تسجد لما خلقت بيدي? Why didn't you bow down to what I created by my own hands? You're not bowing down to a human being or to a creation. You are executing the command of the Creator. So you are worshiping the Creator. He made it very clear. He said, I'm not going to bow down to Him. I'm better than Him. What makes you think that you're better than Him? He said, أنا خير منه. I'm better than Him. This is the sign of arrogance, and this is a symptom of pride and kibr. He said, خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. I'm better than Him since my origin is superior to His origin. You created me from fire, from a smokeless flame, and you created Him from teen, from mud, from dirt. So my origin is superior to Him. So Allah the Almighty kicked him out of paradise, and He deprived him from His mercy eternally because of al-kibr, because of arrogance. When the Prophet ﷺ defined al-kibr, he said, al-kibru bataru al-haqqi wa ghamtu an-nas. 2 attitudes confirm arrogance in any person. One of them is sufficient, but if both of them are in a person, then he is definitely an arrogant person. Bataru al-haqq is rejecting the truth, and this is what Satan did. Satan was addressing Allah the Almighty, and he said, بِعِزَّتِكَ لَأُغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. He is swearing to the honor and majesty of Allah. Satan did not deny the lordship of Allah. He perfectly knows that he was created by Allah, but he was arrogant. He was so arrogant to obey the command of Allah because he did not like it. He thought that Adam should be inferior to him. So meanwhile, he recognized the lordship of Allah and he is the only one who is worthy of worship, but because of this arrogance in his heart, he disobeyed him, and he challenged his command. And accordingly, he was punished by being expelled from heaven, and obviously promised to stay eternally in hellfire. Now, the second trait is ghamtun nas. Ghamtun nas is to look down at people in a very simple English. To consider yourself superior to people. To assume yourself better than others. The betterness or superiority could be perhaps because you assume yourself more righteous. So even in religion, assuming yourself more righteous than others, this is forbidden. This is arrogance. It could be due to wealth, because Allah the Almighty granted you or tested you a little more than others. So you feel yourself better than others. It could be because of the type of car or ride that you're driving. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said the harsh nature and the arrogant nature of those who own camels, because when they ride on the back of the camels, they are on top of people. While the nature of the shepherd who look after the sheep is as-sakina, tranquility and humility, because of the weakness of the sheep. So they hang around a lot with the sheep, so they gain some of their traits. And those who hang around a lot with the camels, they gain some of their traits. And when the person is driving a car which doesn't have air condition, so he's lowering down the windows in midsummer in order to get some air while it's very hot, you can barely find a person like that is showing arrogance. While it happens that when a person is driving a very luxurious car, that he may feel himself better than others and superior to others. It could be due to being more knowledgeable than others, and in this case, knowledge has become a curse, not a blessing, because knowledge is supposed to make the person humble himself. Allah the Almighty stated, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Whatever you've been given of knowledge is very little. Then he stated in another ayah, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ. And above every knowledgeable one, there is one who's more knowledgeable. So no matter how much knowledge you obtained, it is very little. And definitely there is somebody who is superior to you in knowledge, whether it is science, applied sciences or knowledge, or the religious knowledge. When Musa alayhi salam, with pure instinct, answered the question which was presented to him by one of Bani Israel, Ya Rasulullah, who is the most knowledgeable person on earth? According to his knowledge, he said, myself. He's a messenger whom Allah spoke to him. He does not know nor recognize anyone who has more knowledge about Allah other than him. Allah the Almighty reveals to him that in fact you're not the most knowledgeable one. And we have one of our servants who's not even a messenger, who has more knowledge than you, and you're supposed to follow him in order to learn from him. Another internship with a person who's more knowledgeable than Musa alayhi salam. And Musa alayhi salam exerts an effort, and he travels and he leaves his people and he leaves his business and his mission and message in order to obtain a continuous education because of the answer that he answered. It was a wrong answer. One should say, Allah knows best. I'm not sure. So he meets with Al-Khadr and he says, I would like to follow you in order to learn from your knowledge. He said, لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. I'm sorry, you cannot afford to remain with me. You won't have patience to stay with me in order to obtain knowledge. He confirms to him, سَتَجِدُونِي إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ صَابِرًا وَلَا أَعْصِي لَكَ أَمْرًا. You will definitely find me patient, and I will never disobey any of your commands. And again, Al-Khadr is insistent, no, you cannot afford it. And finally he promises him, and he accepts Musa alayhi salam to join him in an internship to learn from Al-Khadr. Musa alayhi salam, Kalimullah, you all know the story. Many incidents like that. Allah the Almighty is teaching us repeatedly that we should humble ourselves. So Musa alayhi salam promised, قال ستجدني إن شاء الله صابرا ولا أعصي لك أمرا. Then Al-Khadr requires him that if you were to follow me, you should not ask me about anything until I reveal its reality to you. In order to be successful in your life, whether in this worldly life or in the hereafter, you have to humble yourself. You have to have the quality of humility, because your origin is known and your end is known as well. And your fate to you is unknown. You're always in a state of fear. Your worries all about what will happen to me after I die. You're begging Allah the Almighty to be saved, to receive salvation, and that is the thing which keeps you busy, or should keep you busy all the time. Let's examine those beautiful verses and Quranic references which Imam al-Nawawi, may Allah have mercy on him, stated in the beginning of this chapter. The chapter of التواضع وخفض الجناح للمؤمنين. The word تواضع means humility, and خفض الجناح, خفض is to lower, and al-janah means wing. I don't have wings, do you? You don't have wings. So why do we say خفض الجناح للمؤمنين, to lower your wings towards the believers? As Allah the Almighty stated in ayah number 215 of Surah Ash-Shu'ara, commanding His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَاخْفِضْ جَنَاحَكَ لِمَنِ اتَّبَعَكَ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, lower your wing to those who follow you of the believers. What does it mean? Whenever a bird flies and takes off and ascends to higher levels, the bird needs to spread out his wings, or the birds need to spread out their wings. And what makes them climb higher and higher? The wings, right? So, the tools which make the person become superior or higher than others, the wings, you need to lower them. You need to land. You need to come to a complete landing. You need to lower your side, your wing. You need to show humility. So this is a metaphor. It is taken from the birds spreading out their wings in order to fly to higher levels. Also, Allah the Almighty ordered us how to deal with the parents. وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ. The word lowering the wing or the wings was also utilized in the ayah in which Allah the Almighty ordered every believer to humble himself before his parents, to be dutiful and kind to his parents. وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ, to show humility and mercy to his parents. And there is a very interesting thing in this ayah. He said that Allah the Almighty was commanding Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this ayah to show humility and to lower his wing to the believers. Correct. While we know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is already the most humble one, while he is the greatest human being and the greatest man ever walked the earth. Correct. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says in the hadith, إِنَّمَا أَنَا بِمَنْزِلَةِ الْوَالِدِ أُعَلِّمُكُمْ. I'm like your father. I teach you like a father. And Allah the Almighty described the mercy of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his kindness towards the believers in Surah At-Tawbah in ayah number 128. He says, بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. For the believers, His pity and full of mercy, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What was the ayah again? 128 of Surah At-Tawbah. لَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ عَزِيزٌ عَلَيْهِ مَا عَنِتُّمْ عزيز عليه ما عنتم حريص عليكم بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم. Verily there has come to you a messenger from among yourselves. عزيز عليه ما عنتم. It grieves him that you should receive any injury or hardship. حريص عليكم. He is very anxious over you to be rightly guided. بالمؤمنين رؤوف رحيم. For the believers, he is pity and full of mercy. صلى الله عليه وسلم. This is what Allah said about him, yet he is still commanding him to be merciful and to maintain mercy and to humble himself when he deals with his companions. We need to learn something out of that. When an ordinary person tells you, fear Allah, be dutiful to Allah, you should not get upset. When a person who's a layman advises you and you're a scholar, you should not be upset. Imam Abu Hanifa, may Allah have mercy on him, was sitting in Masjid al-Khayf in Mina during the days of At-Tashriq, during Hajj. And subhanallah, a man came to him and asked him about a mas'ala. So he gave his opinion. The mas'ala has a different answer which was given by Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him. Somebody heard him giving this answer, heard Abu Hanifa giving this answer. He said, you son of such and such, and he said such a very bad word. He accused him of being born out of an illicit relationship, of adultery. And this is very, very severe, very harsh. And he's insulting Imam Abu Hanifa. There could be a massacre out of that. But this is happening in Mina. You're opposing Abdullah ibn Umar, you son of such and such. Imam Abu Hanifa smiled and said, yes, because I have a proof that says otherwise. And he did not even pay attention to the insult, to the accusation, because he was focused on something greater, which is to deliver the right answer in the light of what he knows. I know that it is very hard, sometimes impossible, for people like yourself and myself to be like them, but we're learning in order to take them as our role model. In order to copy them, we will study in the Hadith how a Bedouin comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he grabs hold of him from his collar, which was made of wool, which leaves a mark and causes redness and rash in his neck ﷺ, and says, oh Muhammad, give me of what Allah has given you. You're not giving me from the wealth of your mother or your father. And another person says to him, be just, man. And the Prophet ﷺ simply smiles. And when he says, be just, he says, وَيْحُكْ فَمَنْ يَعْدِلْ إِلَّمْ أَعْدِلْ. If I'm not being just, now because he's accusing him as a prophet, as not being just. He said, if I'm not being just, who will be? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But he doesn't punish him. So Allah the Almighty described this attitude of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam of being forbearing, of being kind, of being merciful, and humbling himself towards the believers by saying, and this is described in ayah number 159 of Surah Al-Imran, chapter number 3. He says, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. You know, this ayah, first of all, it means, have you been harsh-hearted towards the believers, towards your companions? What would happen? لَانفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. They would have dispersed away from you. They would have departed you and left you alone. But the companions never did. فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ. So pardon them. وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ. And seek forgiveness for them. وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. And consult them in the matter. This ayah, brothers and sisters, was revealed after the crisis which took place on the Battle of Uhud. 300 of those who were recognized as Muslims withdrew with Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul. were munafiqeen. And the 700 who would remain with him, the Prophet ﷺ taught them what they are supposed to do. The 50 archers, you should not leave this mount of the archers under any circumstances, whether you see us winning or you see us utterly defeated. And Allah the Almighty grants Muslims victory, great victory in the beginning of the battle. Abu Sufyan and the Meccan chieftains, they ran off and they dropped everything behind. So the Muslims started collecting the war spoils. And the archers entirely forgot about the command of the Prophet ﷺ. They disobeyed the command of their Prophet and the command of their leader Abdullah ibn Jubayr. 40 of whom descended to join the companions and the rest of the army in collecting the spoils. As a result, Khalid ibn al-Walid climbs with his troop the mount and he kills the remaining 10 archers, including Abdullah ibn Jubayr. And a chaos started when Muslims were attacked and they were ambushed. Khalid ibn al-Walid occupying the mount of the archers with his people. And Abu Sufyan returned back and they got stuck in between the Muslim army. So they ran off, most of them. And only a handful of the companions remained around the Prophet ﷺ, Talha ibn Ubaidillah, Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, and a few. The Prophet ﷺ lost his front teeth and his helmet, which have rings, penetrated his cheek, and he was bleeding, and it was a big disaster. 70 of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ were martyred. Mus'ab ibn Umair and Al-Hamza, his body was mutilated. May Allah be pleased with him, Sayyid al-Shuhada. All of that, there are many reasons for the Prophet ﷺ to be very angry with his companions. There are many reasons for him to curse those who were the cause behind this calamity. But he didn't. So Allah the Almighty said, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. Due to mercy from Allah that He granted you, you were kind, you were gentle with them. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَظًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. Have you been harsh-hearted? Have you dealt with them harshly? لَانْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. They would have dispersed away from you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already confirmed how the Prophet ﷺ was kind, was humble and merciful towards the believers, particularly his companions. Yet He still commands them, وَاخْفِضْ جَنَاحَكَ لِمَنِ اتَّبَعَكَ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, and lower your wing to those who follow you of the believers. If this command was given to the Prophet ﷺ, then what about us? How should we deal with each other? That will be explained in the following reference, the ayah of Surah Al-Ma'idah, inshaAllah. But after we take a short break, please stay tuned. We'll be back inshaAllah in a couple minutes.
حبيب الله رسول الله حبيب الله فلا يتدبرون القرآن.
One day the Prophet ﷺ came out to the companions radiallahu anhum, and he said to them, don't you bear witness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship and He has no partners? Don't you bear witness that I am the messenger of Allah? Don't you bear witness that the Quran is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So the companions radiallahu anhum, they said, yes, O Prophet of Allah. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, فَأَبْشِرُوا, have the glad tidings, the great news as a result of this. Because the Quran has two ends to it. One end with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and one end in your hands. Then he said to them alayhi salatu wassalam, فَتَمَسَّكُوا بِهِ, hold fast to it, because you would never be led astray and you would never be perished if you're holding fast to the book of Allah. Because of that, join us every week in Quran in Depth, where we recite and reflect and ponder over the verses of the Quran. We go in depth into the verses, following the ways of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions radiallahu anhum. When they used to take the verses, one set of verses after another, they would recite it, they would reflect upon the meanings of it, and they would act according to it, and then they would go to the next set of verses. Join us every week in Quran in Depth, so that we would recite and reflect and learn more about the book of Allah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our life and to make us among those who follow the Quran and the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Dear viewers, as the title suggests, our discussion on this series is talking about ideas or isms and schisms, or let's be more precise, ideologies.
The importance of studying ideologies comes from the fact that ideologies are ideas that control how society looks at the world.
France is a liberal secular state, and these women who are wearing the burkini are showing their religion outwardly.
Islam has established a scientific community. It has not stifled science. It has nothing to do with science. The major name that comes up with civil rights movement is Martin Luther King. But there was another unacknowledged contribution from Malcolm X, who defended black rights. When he converted to Islam, he started to disregard.
When we look at slavery inside of Islam, we find many times that a person was a slave when he entered into Islam, but then later on he ended up becoming like a leader of an army or the leader of a particular country or a place. So does Islam allow for slaves to take positions of power?
Yeah, slaves have a greater chance of being integrated in society.
Joining us on this fantastic new series, The Pool of Ideas, where we're taking a number of ideologies from across the world, from throughout history, and we're trying to give them some comprehensive understanding as well as shedding some Islamic light on them as well.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. With the second reference in the chapter of At-Tawadu' wa Khafdul Janahi lil Mu'mineen, which is modesty and showing courtesy towards the believers. The second reference is of Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 54. In this verse, Allah the Almighty says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا من يرتد منكم عن دينه فسوف يأتي الله بقوم يحبهم ويحبونه أذلة على المؤمنين أعزة على الكافرين يجاهدون في سبيل الله ولا يخافون لومة لائم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله واسع عليم. And the meaning of this verse is, O you who believe, whoever of you should revert from his religion, Allah will bring forth in place of them a people He will love and who will love Him. The traits of those people, they humble themselves towards the believers. They are powerful against the non-believers, and they strive in the cause of Allah and do not fear the blame of the blamer or a critic. That is the favor of Allah, and He bestows it upon whom He wills, and Allah is all-encompassing and knowing, sufficient for all the needs of His creatures and all-knowing. What is this ayah? Ayah number 54 of Surah Al-Ma'idah. Being a believer and accepting Islam is a favor that Allah the Almighty bestowed upon the believers. It is not the other way around. Those who believe, those who worship, those who show servitude to Allah the Almighty, they do not do Allah a favor. It is Allah the Almighty who did them the greatest favor by guiding them to His straight path. So if any person for any reason decided to abandon the religion and to choose whatever, any path of disbelief, Allah the Almighty tells them that Islam is not in need for you. This religion is not depending on any of you, is not depending on anyone. In fact, Allah the Almighty is capable to replace you with people whom He loves and they love. So the first quality of the true believers, that Allah the Almighty loves them and they love Him. أذلة على المؤمنين. And the second, or you can say the third quality and trait of such people, أذلة على المؤمنين. They humble themselves before their fellow believers. أعزة على الكافرين. But towards the non-believers, they are stern and powerful. They show عزة, mighty and dignity. يجاهدون في سبيل الله. They strive for the sake of Allah. ولا يخافون لومة لائم. As long as they know what they are doing is correct and it is for the sake of Allah, they are not afraid of the blame of the critics. These qualities of being true believers, of being loved by Allah and loving Allah and humbling yourselves before the believers and showing dignity and izzah before the non-believers and striving for the sake of Allah and not fearing the blame of the blamers, this is of the bounty of Allah. This is something that Allah grants to whomever He wills. يُؤْتِيهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. So if you're one of them, you're lucky because Allah chose you to bless you with these qualities. And indeed, Allah is sufficient for all the needs of His creatures. Alim, all-knowing, He knows who deserves to be blessed with such qualities. Subhanallah. During the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, one of the Arabic king from Ghassan by the name Jabala ibn al-Ayham sent to Umar ibn al-Khattab that he would like to accept Islam and join the Muslim Ummah. It was an honor for any person during this time, especially during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, to enroll in Islam and to be under the umbrella of the Muslim Ummah. So Umar ibn al-Khattab was very happy and delighted, and he received them in Mecca, and he came with 500 horsemen on the back of their horses wearing gold and silk, adorned with jewelry, and he still doesn't know that Islam does not forbid men against wearing gold and silk. So when he arrived to Mecca, he accepted Islam and the people along with him, and he was performing tawaf. While he was performing tawaf, an ordinary person from Bani Fizara stepped on his izar. The izar is the lower garment that we wrap around our waist while performing tawaf, or in Umrah or Hajj. A lot of cultures actually wear the izar as their cultural attire. So Jabal ibn al-Ayham was very upset because of this very ordinary man coming so close to him and stepping with his foot on his izar. So he slapped him over his face and he broke his nose. This person whom we don't know his name, ran to Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu, and he showed him what happened to him, and he complained. This king who just accepted Islam, he punched me in the face and he humiliated me in front of the Kaaba. Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu investigated and he collected Jabal ibn al-Ayham. Did he do that? He said, yes. Did you know what he did? He stepped on my izar. So Umar ibn Khattab asked him for al-qawd or at-tardi. Al-qawd is that if you cannot make this man happy, if you cannot apologize to him and compensate him for what you hurt him with, then al-qawd, which is equality in punishment. Al-anf bil-anf. You break somebody's nose, you break your nose. He said, me? For this person? No way. So Umar ibn Khattab insisted, well, in Islam, all people are equal before Allah. And there is a law and order. Nowadays, we don't have law and order. Nowadays, we are following exactly the footsteps of the people of the book. as the Prophet ﷺ said, that they went astray because whenever a layman would commit a crime, adultery or commit theft, they will throw the book at him, and they will be very strict in applying the law. They would cut off his hand, they would stone the adulteress if he was an ordinary person, and so on. But if he was a noble person, nobility in a sense that he belonged to a rich family or to the royal family, then they would twist the rules. They would find a way out. They would cut corners. So this is how they went astray. And this is how we went astray, brothers and sisters, because this is what we do nowadays. At the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anh, he refused. And he told him that if you choose to compensate him, if you choose to apologize to him so that he would pardon you, fine. Otherwise, then we would have to punish you with an equal punishment. He said, let me think about it. And at night, he withdrew with his people, and they left from Mecca, they fled from Mecca. And he joined the Roman emperor, where he became Christian. Later on, he made some poetry, how he regretted converting from Islam to Christianity, and he would wish he wouldn't have done so. But some people may say, Umar ibn Khattab was kind of harsh. Also, this is an ordinary person, it wouldn't hurt. No, it would hurt. When you become a Muslim, you have to understand that Islam comes with a package. This package is not only to say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah and to be willing to do the ibadat in the forms of rituals only. You have to understand that all people before Allah are the same and are equal. And superiority is only for those who are more righteous, those who are more pious. And that is something only Allah the Almighty can judge and decide. We cannot even judge our own selves, let alone judging others. So Allah the Almighty says, if you convert, if you abandon the deen, I'm not saying this ayah was revealed because of this incident, because this incident was years and years, at least 34 years after this ayah was revealed. During this incident happened during the Khilafah of Umar ibn Khattab. But I'm saying this is an example. قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم. The Bedouins, they keep talking about their Islam and their Iman as if they have done the Prophet a favor. يمنون عليك أن أسلموا قل لا تمنوا علي إسلامكم بل الله يمن عليكم أن هداكم للإيمان إن كنتم صادقين. They used to consider their accepting Islam as a favor they have done to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah the Almighty revealed to him to tell them that لا تمنوا علي إسلامكم. In fact, it is Allah who've done you a favor by bringing you into Islam, that only if you're true in accepting Islam. So whenever you are a Muslim, whenever you are fulfilling your duties towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you should be grateful to Allah for guiding you to His path. You should not show arrogance, you should not show superiority to others, thinking that you are superior, you're better because you are doing whatever act of worship. Nor should you think that you are doing Islam a favor by accepting Islam, by donating, by giving in a charity, by supporting any Islamic center or Islamic cause. This is all the bounty of Allah. He grants it to whomever He wills. And He knows perfectly who deserves to be rightly guided and who deserves to be given this bounty of becoming a Muslim and possessing and maintaining those beautiful traits of the believers. يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ. Not only that they love Allah, but Allah loves them. And Allah loves those who love Him. Allah's love is developed as a result of loving Allah. Whenever the person is sincere in his love to Allah, is sincere in fulfilling his duties towards Allah, then automatically he will be eligible for Allah's love. In Surah Al Imran, Allah the Almighty said, قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم والله غفور رحيم. So what makes a person eligible for Allah's love is strictly following the guidance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He would be eligible for Allah's love for mahabbatillah يحببكم الله. And furthermore, a bonus package ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم. And Allah will forgive you your sins, and He is of forgiven, the most merciful. So, these qualities of the believers of loving Allah and being loved by Allah is a sign of success, of course. And the second quality was أذلة على المؤمنين. They humbled themselves before the believers. I love this ayah so much, but what I like about this ayah most is how the ayah joined and compared between two things. How the believers should treat each other versus how the believers should treat the non-believers. They humble themselves before the believers. They show courtesy to every fellow Muslim. أذلة على المؤمنين. But before the non-believers, they are powerful. They are dignified. They are mighty. أعزة على الكافرين. What we see nowadays is not what Allah the Almighty wanted us to do and fulfill. Especially when we see millions of poor Muslims coming from poor countries working for their fellow Muslims, whether company owners, whether the government, whether individuals, as a driver, as a maid, as a servant, as a doctor, you name it. And they're being mistreated. Again, I do not generalize, but I'm talking about many cases where a Muslim is being mistreated by his sponsor, by a fellow Muslim, because he's got his passport, he's got control over his residency, he controls when does he leave the country, when does he enter the country, and sometimes people oppress those who are working for them, so they do not pay them their wages for months. Or furthermore, they ask them to go and work for somebody else and even pay them. So the workers pay the employers. This is not in any doctrine, but the doctrine of the oppressors. The doctrine of the oppressors. This is not Islam, and it has nothing to do with Islam. I met some people who told me that by Allah, I haven't gotten paid for the past 7 months. Some people were sitting and said, me, 9 months. I did not receive any payment. I said, how do you guys survive? He said, we borrow from each other. Why? Why? Why do we mistreat each other like that? While they treat non-Muslims, non-believers with honor and with dignity. When you fail to fulfill the requirements of true faith, then you're lagging behind, and you're not eligible to be called what Allah the Almighty said and described the believers with in this ayah. يا أيها الذين آمنوا من يرتد منكم عن دينه فسوف يأتي الله بقوم يحبهم ويحبونه أذلة على المؤمنين. They humble themselves before the believers. أعزة على الكافرين. They are mighty and powerful before the non-believers. So we need to work on that, brothers and sisters, and I hope this reminder may benefit those who mistreat those who are working for them, knowing that those people are Muslims. And by the way, when I say so, I do not mean to go ahead and mistreat your workers, your employees, if they are non-Muslims. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But here I'm talking about a specific thing, which is that when you have somebody working for you or under your supervision, you are his employer, you are his boss, you are his sponsor, treat him with humility. If the Prophet ﷺ instructed in the case of slaves, because there used to be slavery back then. إخوانكم خوالكم فمن كان أخوه تحت أخيه فليطعمه مما يطعم فمن كان أخوه تحت يده فليطعمه مما يطعم وليلبسه مما يلبس ولا تكلفوهم ما لا يطيقون. Which means that if you have somebody who is working for you, this person, whether it's he or she, he is either your brother or sister. You're the master, you're the employer, you're the boss, but he's a human being. And he is like you here, he just happened to serve you. So for being a Muslim, you have to understand that he is your brother or she is your sister. Then let him feed him from whatever you eat. And let him clothe him or give him clothes similar to what you are, not necessarily similar to what you wear, but honor them. Deal with them with respect. And if you were to ask them to do anything, make sure that they can afford to do it. And if you ask them to do anything which you know that it is difficult, then give them a hand. Give your employee, give your servant, give your maid a hand. Yes, this is what the Prophet ﷺ said. And this is what we will be seeing, insha'Allah, in many examples that we are going to learn from the following hadith, from the behavior of the Prophet ﷺ towards his companions and those who are living in Medina, whether Muslims or non-Muslims. With another verse, which will be the last reference in today's episode, is a very famous verse, verse number 13 of Surah Al-Hujurat, in which Allah the Almighty says, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. Allah the Almighty says what it means, O people, O mankind. He is not only addressing the believers, he is addressing every human being. Indeed, we have created you from a male and a female, from a single male and female, Adam and Eve. And we made you into nations and tribes, that you may know one another. Verily, the most honorable of you before Allah is the one who has more taqwa, the one who is more pious. And that is something to be determined only by Allah the Almighty. So how can a person perceive himself better than anyone else or superior to anyone else? Whether based on color, gender, ethnicity, language, or position, perhaps, wealth, or a career or a job, by the end that all of us, brothers and sisters, we all come from the same parents, Adam and Eve. Our brothers and sisters were living in Africa, living in a very primary life, and our brothers and sisters who are living in a very lavish life in Beverly Hills in California. Our brothers and sisters who are very advanced in technology in Japan. Our brothers and sisters everywhere were all human beings belong to Adam and Eve. Can you imagine if a male and a female, a white Caucasian woman got married to an Afro-American man, and their children, they have, mashallah, some who are white with blue eyes and some who are black with curly hair. Can any of the brothers or any of the sisters brag about his complexion before his own sister? Hey, it's your mom. Well, it was your dad. It wasn't me. I did not choose to be whatever I am. It is what Allah the Almighty decided for me. So there is no whatsoever, there should not be any feeling of superiority due to race, color, ethnicity, or even wealth, because we belong to the same parents. Then Allah the Almighty said, then after coming from a single male and female, Adam and Eve, we made you into nations and tribes, into different nations and various tribes. Why? What is the purpose of that? in order to get to know one another, communicate with each other, enjoin one another to what is good, forbid one another against what is evil, visit one another, exchange gifts with each other. That becomes very obvious whenever we happen to be in something which I call it like a melting pot. Imagine whenever we are all airborne in a plane and there is a threat, there is maybe air bombs, or the pilot is running out of fuel, or anything that may happen. You see all the passengers who are all airborne in the same vessel, in the same vehicle, they completely forget about their colors, about their race, about their nationalities, about what kind of passport that you're carrying, because all of us are facing the same fate. All of us are praying and asking God to save us and to make us land safely. Then Allah the Almighty said, when it comes to superiority, it is only Allah the Almighty who determines who's superior. It could be a woman, it could be a colored man, it could be the poorest person, it could be the richest person. Only Allah the Almighty knows, because the determining factor is at-taqwa wal-amal as-salih, righteousness and good deeds. The following ayah, inshaAllah, will be talking about how can a person judge his own deeds and whether he is righteous or not. But that will be discussed in the beginning of the next episode, inshaAllah. Until then, I leave you all in the care of Allah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
حبيب الله رسول الله حبيب الله Allah our God is the greatest, the one and only glory to Him. He wanted humans to be the best and give His best religion to them. Allah our God is the greatest, the one and only glory to Him. He wanted humans to be the best and give His best religion to them.
So why did they ignore that? Forgetting all about hell in paradise, worshipping cows, fire and stones, selling the best with the cheapest price.
So why did they ignore that? Forgetting all about hell and paradise, worshipping cows, fire and stones, selling their best with the cheapest price.